During the period of 1865 to 1914, the Japanese were one of the most influential and prominent immigrant groups to come to America. Before coming to America, they first went to Hawaii, which at the time was an independent region. Right after the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in 1882, Japanese immigration was at its highest point. In 1885 alone, 30,000 Japanese immigrants traveled to Hawaii. As a result of the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was a high demand for cheap labor, therefore giving the Japanese a chance to get jobs. Although the working conditions were very bad in Hawaii, they were far better than Japan. Eventually, in 1900, Hawaii was officially made a U.S. territory. At this point, many of the Japanese that were living in Hawaii decided to move to the west coast of the continental U.S. in cities such as Portland and San Francisco. Once living on the west coast, many Japanese worked on building railroads. In fact, 40% of the railroad labor force was comprised of Japanese immigrants. By 1911, over 400,000 Japanese immigrants made the journey over to U.S.-controlled territories.
As previously mentioned, demand for cheap labor was extremely high due to the decrease in Chinese immigrants who originally worked for low wages. When Japanese immigrants moved from Hawaii to mainland America, they settled in the West for the most part. The majority of these immigrants worked either agricultural jobs or worked on constructing the Eastward Continental Railroad. Japanese immigrants began demanding higher wages when the sugar beet industry began offering competitive wages. Sugar beet production began to grow in the early 1900s due to improved irrigation techniques. It was difficult for Japanese immigrants to get a good paying job due to American distaste towards all Asian immigrants, not only the Chinese. In 1922, the Supreme Court began denying citizenship to anyone born in Japan. Eventually, the U.S. and Japan reached a mutual agreement to not allow any more immigrants to the U.S., with the exception of the wives and children of men previously in America. This was in the best interest of both countries because Americans didn't want any more Japanese immigrants, and Japan didn't want its people to be treated poorly and face discrimination in their new country. Because of the low wages and discrimination Japanese people faced, some wanted to fight for their rights. 500 Japanese and 200 Mexican farm workers in Oxnard, California formed the Japanese Mexican Labor Association in 1903. This was California's first labor union ever formed. Some Japanese immigrants also formed various chapters of the Japanese Association of America. The Japanese Association of America was formed to help fight discrimination, help other Japanese immigrants, and maintain links with Japan. Due to American discrimination, many Japanese immigrants lived in close proximity to each other, forming ethnic neighborhoods. Some immigrants opened authentic Japanese restaurants, while others owned farms or factories in the area. Japanese immigrants also established Buddhist and Methodist churches in these neighborhoods to help keep their culture alive.
Political, economic, social, and cultural leaders in America, they helped build a strong foundation for other Japanese immigrants to settle in the U.S. In the economic aspects, Hiroki Aoki, also known as Rocky Aoki, was an immigrant who came to the United States during the mid-19th century. He founded Benihana, which later on became a huge chain of Japanese restaurants. He introduced Japanese foods and the way of cooking in Japan to the white American population. George Shima became the first Japanese immigrant millionaire by producing potatoes. Shima and his associates controlled 28,000 acres to grow crops. He had more than 500 people working under him. At one point, he produced 85% of all the potato crops for California. He was nicknamed the Potato King. In the social aspect, Tsuru Aoki became a popular stage and screen actress whose career thrived during the 1910s to the 1920s in silent films. She was the first Asian actress to garner top billings in American motion pictures. Some of her best movies include The Dragon Painter and The Wrath of the Gods. In the cultural aspects, Asakawa Kanishi was an Asian historian who taught at Yale as an immigrant. He was born in Fukushima, Japan, and went to Waseda University. He continued his education in the U.S. and got a Ph.D. at Yale. He acquired 21,520 volumes of Japanese library materials for Yale University, as well as 45,000 volumes of similar material for the Library of Congress. He built the foundation of Japanese research collections at both those institutes. In the political aspects, Sanji Abe was the first Japanese American in the Hawaii Territorial Senate. Abe was born in Kailua, Hawaii in 1895 from Japanese immigrant parents. He would later on serve in World War I as a U.S. soldier. Then he ran for the South Hilo district as a Republican and was elected in 1940. He later on got arrested and was sent to an internment camp 8 months after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. The first wave of Japanese immigrants helped set the foundation for other immigrants, not only Japanese but for other Asian countries. People like Sanji Abe influenced other non-white immigrants to run for office. For example, George Ariyoshi became the first Asian American governor for a U.S. state in Hawaii, and Hiram Fong, who was a Republican senator for Hawaii. Economically, very few Japanese immigrants became a tycoon in the business world, but them owning Japanese businesses allowed for new poor immigrants to get jobs. In the social and cultural impact, Japanese immigrants helped people understand their culture, and in the process, this created small neighborhoods with population mostly of Japanese immigrants. There was a huge one in Portland, Oregon.